Welcome, everyone. This is another edition of the Flow Show podcast, number 206. We got the man, the myth, Elliot Roe in the building. Elliot, you've been on before, and I think it was 5 years ago.
Yeah.
And obviously been in touch and do a lot of stuff together, but this is nice. You were number 19, now 206. Good to see you. How are you?
Man, I'm really good. Thanks so much for having me back on the show. It's what a lot of episodes over those last few years.
It is a lot, and it's nice to do it in person. I think we did it remotely. Obviously, we've spent time. You've helped out. You were there the day I found out my wife was pregnant. That was when we first started working together, so memorable. I think that was 2018. But tell me, what's going on? You're in Vegas. What brings you here? Congrats on the book, first of all. Just throw it up right before. Just make sure this is the A-Game Poker, which is, again, something I know spent a lot of time on. You've dealt with a lot of the best poker players in the world. So how are you and why are you in Vegas?
We're in Vegas promoting my app, Prime Mind.
Yep.
So we've got a stand over at the World Series, promoting the book, so A-Game Poker. And then obviously I've got lots of clients in for the World Series. So it's a great time to be able to come in, see people in person, because nearly everything I do is over Zoom.
Yep.
And, like with yourself, it's nice to catch up at least once a year, come into town, say hello and show that I'm a real person.
How often do you get to Vegas?
These days, pre-COVID, it was pretty frequent. These days, it's mainly for the World Series. And then maybe if there's another big event, I might head in once or twice extra a year. But it used to be almost monthly, and just not quite so much anymore.
And tell me about the book right here. So what made you decide to write a book? And there's a lot in here. It's about A-Game Poker. I mean, it's not a poker strategy book. Can you explain a little bit about what this is and how you decided to do this?
Yeah, so I've been a mindset coach in poker now since 2011, and I've worked with a lot of the top players in the game. When it comes to cashes, we went through it. My clients have cashed over $250 million.
Wow.
I've worked with the likes of yourself, Fedor, Phil Galfond, Jason Kuhn, Brian Rast, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And I've learned a lot of lessons over those years. And I really wanted to write the book on it. So I think I have an understanding of mindset in a way that very few people on the planet do, because I've had all of this experience working with some of the best minds in the game. I wanted to write the book. And a lot of my business now, I'm now working with a lot of CEOs, a lot of traders. So I wanted to make sure while I was still very much in the poker world, we got something out there that everyone could afford.
And it's interesting, you mentioned 250 million. Of course, that doesn't count cash games. One of my very close friends, Charles Hook, I know who, that's one of the I saw Fedor in Prime Mind, but knowing someone personally there, I saw that kind of develop and really get a great regiment. That was something that was impactful to me. I was like, it definitely works, something I know. And obviously that doesn't list the cash game winnings and stuff with players.
This is just
tournaments
that's
verified. And then CEOs, right? We're talking you're talking about big money, like stuff you can't also quantify. What to you is more, I would say, impactful, or who gets more out of it, in terms of the scope of improvement? Do you think that it's more room, poker or business?
I mean, business is uncapped.
Yep.
So when it comes to someone who has a high potential and they're holding themselves back, it doesn't matter what industry they're in. Working on their mindset can help.
Yep.
And the way I describe it is, if you don't know what to do, you should be looking for a strategy coach. So someone, if it's poker, a poker strategy coach. If it's a business coach. If you know what to do but you can't bring yourself to do it, that's when you need a mindset coach, because more strategic information isn't going to help you. But obviously, if you can work through that self-sabotage, those procrastination issues, then you can be able to see that upside of the knowledge that you have, but you're not applying. So in almost any industry where someone's competitive, someone's trying to have an edge over the field, which is business, it is trading, it is professional sports, it is obviously professional poker as well, we can take people to the next level. But the reality of it is, poker is capped at some level, and business is uncapped. I've had clients IPO their companies, people sell their companies for extreme amounts of money, traders trading, at 9 figures. So obviously there's more upside for them than the poker players.
And what about athletes? Do you do some work with specifically athletes?
Yeah, so over the years I've worked with, I think, 3 UFC champions. I've had Olympic medalists, international rugby players, random people from different sports. And again, all of it is, how can someone perform at their best in the high pressure clutch moment? And ironically, a session for a poker player is almost exactly the same as a session for a UFC fighter or a session for a Wall Street trader. It's a case of, where is that anxiety coming up? Where are they not performing in a way that they could? And what's going on in their mind? What's holding them back that we can work through to free that up so they're not sabotaging anymore?
What do you notice about attributes within the most successful poker players, athletes, business CEOs? What is something that sort of, because you can't make someone that just doesn't want to do the work or that it doesn't have it. Like what is something though that you've noticed a common theme amongst people that just are super successful and driven?
Well, one of the things is just having an understanding that they're going to have to put in the effort. And that it's worthwhile putting in effort, not just to their mental game, but to their training as well. So that consistency, that discipline. A theme that I've seen in top performers in almost the very top performers in almost every industry is when they're looking at their competition, even if they're the number one in the world, they look at what number 3 is doing and say, can I learn anything from number 3 in the world? Mm-hmm. But a lot of the time when I'm working with people who are successful but haven't quite yet reached the top, when they look at those slightly lower than themselves, they're extraordinarily critical and they're not looking at what they can learn. So when I've seen the top players in the world in poker, guys running companies, professional athletes, the guys who are truly number one are always looking for, what can I learn? Why is this guy doing this? Is there a chance I can find an extra edge somewhere? Yeah. And I think that's something that separates the very best in the world from people who are, top 0.1%, right. Because it takes something special to become number one in the world. And I've been fortunate enough to work with multiple people who've become number one in the world in different industries and different sports and activities.
And do you enjoy focusing with people you have worked with, or do you is it fun for you a challenge, or do you rather work with someone that's sort of buttoned up like top 10 that wants to go to 1, or is it someone that sort of just needs a ton of help? What's more rewarding to get them there?
Generally, when people are coming to me, they're probably top 50, top 30 in the world, looking to break the top 10, looking to become number one in the world. So that's generally who
it's like in poker, someone that is learning the basics and the rules of the game. They're not going to go to the top player, coach in the world to get you need to get some sort of.
So it needs to be that the potential is there. So for me, the exciting situations are just when someone is coming to me with obvious high potential, and then we're seeing a repeating pattern of self-sabotage. Mm-hmm. So, hey, Elliot, every time I get to $1 million, I go on pause. I sabotage myself. I stop myself making more money. Every time I find myself on the final table, I can see that my adrenaline goes up and I just start punting and giving away my chips. Right. All of these sort of the repeating patterns that if we can break that pattern, the client will see extreme success. And it doesn't really matter what activity. It's really just this, when I see the potential and I see someone holding themselves back, there's a lot of excitement that comes from helping someone through that and then being part of a story, where in some cases it's, they go on a streak in poker like Fedor did. Yeah. That was an incredible thing to be a part of. Or when Phil Galfond was doing his challenges, that was an incredible series of challenges to be involved with and watch the evolution over those games.
Right. You get to actually see the result and get to equate it to something. What is with Fedor, when you guys did Prime Mind, could you explain a bit what that entails and what to get the most out of it? Like I sign up, I'm in Prime Mind, there's different things you can do. Like what is a reasonable amount of time to allocate to the app, whether it's the meditation or the sleeping or your morning routine? What do you think is realistically, because nowadays it's short, everyone's got, they don't have 5 minutes to watch a clip. So what is realistically beneficial that you could get out of Prime Mind? And is it 30 minutes a day to allocate 10 minutes? What makes it worthwhile?
Okay, so Prime Mind is a hypnotherapy app that I made with Fedor years ago. So Fedor had his huge streak of winning tournaments. He felt that some of the mindset work we'd done had a really big impact on the success he had had. And obviously most players can't afford to work with me. Right. So he said, hey, let's put something together so that everyone can try this sort of work at a price point that works. So that's why we created it. If you're a poker player specifically, there are pre-game warm-ups that you can listen to. I would highly recommend investing the time, the 10 minutes to listen to that before you sit at the table to play. There's also cool-down audios to listen to in poker. So if you're feeling stressed after your sessions, some guys, they just can't let go of the mistakes they've made. And it impacts their sleep and they're thinking about it for a few days. You listen to one of those audios to just let go of that stress. Right. And then we have the more day-to-day stuff for non-poker players, which would be, motivate yourself, start your day, things for anxiety, things for confidence, things for sleep, as you mentioned.
Yep.
But generally, if you do one of them 15 minutes a day, you should feel an impact. And you can download it on iTunes, on Apple. It's free to try.
Yep.
I think there's like 40 free audios, and then you can pay something per year, and you get 400 audios, something like that.
And in terms of successful routines, what would you say is like a theme you see too? A successful people waking up at it? Is it getting up early? Is it before you go on your phone? You do something? Like, give me some sort of tips to people that maybe just like something that you did notice people don't do.
Well, I don't think there's any magic to morning routines, but I do see, as you say, some patterns. One of the patterns is consistent going to bed times and wake times are very important. I don't think it needs to be you need to wake up at 4 or 6 or 8. But I think that consistency is incredibly healthy, ideally following circadian rhythm. But obviously for some poker players, that's not possible.
Yeah, it's difficult, yeah.
In terms of routines, exercise is extraordinarily important. And that's something that I've seen in almost all of the high performers I work with. They're taking their health really seriously. And sometimes that's one of the biggest battles for people who are mid-level. So they don't want to invest that time. I mean, personally, I have a personal trainer 4 days a week. I do a sauna 5 days a week.
I'm hearing a lot about sauna now, cold plunge.
I've got a sauna and cold plunge. Yep. I invest that time every day. So I use that for my meditation time. So I'll get up, I'll have a sauna, I'll meditate in the sauna because that's like 2 things at once. And then I'll do a quick cold plunge. So I highly recommend that. For me, that works, and I feel a difference if I do that.
Yeah.
But, obviously not everyone has a sauna, but you can go for a jog. You can get yourself to the gym. As I say, I utilize a personal trainer. I think that's the best money I spend,
right?
Because it forces yourself to keep yourself in shape. And I don't know what other people like. For me, if I have a client say, hey, can you do an extra session? If I've got a personal trainer booked, I'll still do my gym session with my personal trainer. And there's a decent chance I might skip that session if I don't have someone booked. So I find that a really good mechanical way to make sure I get my exercise in all of those times a week. But these are some of the real basics that, as I say, so many people miss it. But if you put in that effort, you'll see a difference to your stress levels. You'll see a difference in your confidence. And all of those things add up to extra edge at the poker table. Generally, anything that's uncomfortable, that you feel like, hey, maybe I don't want to do this, generally that's what's going to give you an edge in any activity because the other people aren't bothering to do it.
Right.
So anything that's tough, your competition probably aren't putting in that effort, and that's a way to gain some edge over them. And that's what I see with the best in the world.
And within poker, what do you think is maybe underrated or just something that you've noticed, like from like the Fedor, this type of run and stuff, like with the focus or the mentality? Because again, it is small edges, just like in anything, small edges like on the focus. And we talked about this, obviously I'm more in content sort of creation, YouTube, this type of thing, and being alert, right? Being aware at least, hey, I'm sacrificing some stuff and to do this, and what does that look like? Because how big a difference does that make? Because there's some of these guys like, you've just, Adamo, Adrian Mateus, like some of these guys, these absolute guys are playing the highest stakes, biggest buy-ins. They're just like killer laser focus, and they seem so, just in tune to everything. How talk to me about the cycle kind of level of like what it takes you think to be the best. Is there anything that stands out that guys are doing that's just like that you notice is different than others?
I think it's the doing everything. And that is the difference. None of these things are a quick fix. So it's not a case of, hey, if you get a good night's sleep, that means you're going to be the most focused player if you do the exercise. But if you're doing the study, which is the first one, obviously, the exercise, you're getting good sleep, you're meditating or preparing with prime mind beforehand, you're on the breaks, you're not talking about bad beats, but instead you're finding yourself a little bit of space, getting all of your needs met. These are it's sort of each thing gives a tiny bit of edge, but these compound. And what I see from the best players, if we look at the high roller series now, everyone looks like a machine.
They're in shape. There's no one out. The people aren't out of shape. They're not sloppy. They're dialed in.
And you can see it. I've been over at the series, and like when the guys playing the 50K walk in, they look different to the other guys. Right? You can see who's playing the 50K.
Right.
And, if you're not playing the 50K yet, I would take a hint from that. If they're all looking like they're looking after themselves differently, they're not doing it for fun. They're doing it to have a competitive edge.
Right.
So that's something I would say,
There's
just follow the
been
clues.
Yeah, there's been a health sort of it seems like as a professional poker player, if you really, it would be interesting to take like 2024 today, 2014, 2004, 94, sort of like the top 10 or 25 and kind of look at what that looks like. And what has been the most rewarding to you? What's the most, out of all the coaching, the experiences, is there any kind of stories that stand out or things that just kind of like make it so rewarding side of you? Or is it the development of the app or doing the book? What to you is sort of your thing that you're most proud of?
One of the nicest things, so we had the stand over at the World Series.
Yep.
And we've had the book out, we've had the app out for a number of years. It is updated now, but just having so many people I've never met come over and say, hey, thank you, my life's different now because I've been following these processes, I've been listening to the audios.
Yep.
So the big stories are obviously, it's fun to be involved when someone wins a UFC belt,
right,
or when someone wins the main event, and those, they're big keystone moments. But it's been really nice over the last few weeks to have someone I've never met before who plays small stakes or mid stakes poker say, hey, my life changed direction because I started working on my mindset and I listened to some podcast interviews and I started to understand I had the power to change. And I've really enjoyed that while I've been here at the series.
That's awesome. And I know obviously we've worked together and I have friends that have worked with you and swear by you. And of course, just like anything, there's levels, there's to it. It's not cheap. And what people that you now have a team and some amazing coaches that are maybe more up and coming, or obviously great coaches. But if someone wants to work with you or work with your team, what is the best way to do that? And how would you recommend to someone just like a little less expensive? What are some of the ways that they can be involved?
The first thing I'd say is read the book.
Okay.
So you can get that on Amazon, and that provides a lot of the basics. From there, there's website links. So if you go to primemind.com, you can apply for coaching. And as I said, we've got 8 coaches now, all at different price points, different levels of experience. Some of them are former professional poker players who've then got trained in hypnotherapy, and then they've had advanced training from me, so that they're really experienced in the area. They can help if it's poker specific. And that's if you want to work through the deeper stuff. So if you're seeing this self-sabotage, these difficult patterns, so primemind.com, and you can find that list of coaches and we can find someone for you. But the book is the first place because it's cheap to buy a book. We've got it on Audible as well, so you can listen in the gym.
Right.
You don't even have to read it. And that will give you an idea of the sort of work that I do and whether you want to be doing that sort of work. Because I think, as you said at the beginning of the conversation, this is work that someone actively has to want to be doing.
Right.
They need to be willing to face where there are deficits, face that discomfort, and you've got to be ready for that. And you can't force people into it. Sometimes people are like, hey, can I send my friend? Can I send my wife? And the first question is, do they actually want to do this work?
Here,
Because if they don't want to be here, we're just wasting our time and money.
And talk about how unique and different, everyone's different, right? With coffee's good for you or not, or do this or that, or sleep, you need 6 hours, 8 hours. Is there any sort of base, sleep to me is always fascinating. Of course, the circadian rhythms and the ideal time, you don't want to go to bed at 3 a.m. and wake up at 10, you want to go to bed at whatever, but is there a certain amount of hours? Is it do you say, if you were to say, and let's just say what's your general routine?
So for me, I look for 7 hours minimum.
Okay.
I have a friend called Molly Eastman. Her website sleepisaskill.com. I've worked with her as a coach, and she's very into circadian rhythm. And I believe that 7-8 hours sleep is ideal and optimal. And when people are looking to really cut their sleep back, it seems to impact their performance over time. You might get away with it for a couple of weeks, but you start really feeling it if you get into a few months of getting 6 hours sleep. It hits most people pretty hard.
Right.
So I would say when it comes to sleep, 7-8 hours of sleep. I use an Oura ring, so I track everything. I try and stay really consistent with the time I go to bed and then the time I get up in the morning. Also for sleep hacks, I've got a product called a Sleep Doc Pro, which is from a company called Sleep Me, which keeps your bed really cold. So my side of the bed's ice cold. My wife's side of the bed, she doesn't have it quite so cold. She has it warmer.
Okay.
But because I measure with the Oura ring, I can see that I get deeper sleep. So I get better sleep scores if I have that temperature turned down on my bed. So it's just worthwhile because, again, sleep's important. The diet and exercise are important.
Yep.
When it comes to the diet and exercise, though, I would say from what I've seen over, I've worked with a ton of clients, it doesn't seem like there's a right diet for everybody. It seems like you should really be testing it. So test different diets, see which one makes you personally feel best, and don't base it on what you're told to eat. Base it on how you feel. And the same with exercise. Like some people feel great after they lift weights. Personally, that's where I feel best is when I'm doing weights. Other people, cardio makes them feel great.
Right.
So see
it's sort of, it depends.
Yes.
It's dependent and independent.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So do the testing and base it on what makes you feel better on a Tuesday. And if you're feeling better, that's what's good for you. You don't have to listen to other people.
And how did you get into hypnotherapy and coaching and this type of thing? Where did you first come about this?
So very long time ago, I had a fear of flying. And someone recommended a hypnotherapist, and she managed to resolve it in an hour. It completely changed my life. So I wouldn't do long haul flights, and she brought up this memory of me being at my grandfather's house, seeing a picture of a small plane, being told it crashed and killed his business partner. And I was a small child, and she worked through that memory, and I wasn't scared of flying anymore.
Wow.
Super interesting because I wasn't aware of the memory. And when I spoke to my parents, they were like, yeah, that's true. That did happen.
Wow.
So I had like a memory I wasn't aware of that completely explained an irrational fear of flying. Because of that, I went and got trained in hypnotherapy, thinking it would be a fun hobby.
Yeah.
And then it just became a lot better than my other job. I was working in solar energy investments, building.
Where did you grow up?
I grew up in Ascot, which is near London, about 30 minutes outside of London.
Wow. Interesting. And so what year did you actually officially start becoming?
So that was 2010, 2009, 2010. And then I think it was 2011, I started doing poker players.
And how did you get into poker?
So one of my friends, I was doing some work with local golfers, and one of my friends worked for the EPT and said, hey, if you're helping these guys putt under pressure, you know, I'm watching people lose millions of dollars on final tables.
Or win, hopefully.
Or win, And like, could you help them play better on a final table? And I was like, I don't know. So I just started doing free sessions for poker players, and they started winning more. And then poker became a big part of my career from that point. And then poker players, as you know, they play with businessmen, they play with traders, they play with professional athletes.
Yeah.
And as the success continued in poker, I started getting introduced to these other industries. And then, you know, then I started working in those different industries. And but all of it, like poker was the starting point for working with all of these high performers. So I owe poker a lot, and that's part of wanting to write that book and give something back to the community.
Cool. And how specifically Fedor, and what year was that, and how did you get introduced to him specifically?
So a friend of his had recommended him, and he's been kind enough to tell this story publicly, so I can share it.
Yeah.
But a friend of his recommended me, and this is before he'd won any of the live high rollers. So he had some success online, but he was struggling in live high rollers.
Okay.
And he basically came to me saying, I don't understand what's going on. You know, I want to work on my mental game. And what happened was we did this session, and the stories in the book, where he talked about being bullied in childhood, and he was holding himself back in school because he noticed that if he didn't show how intelligent he was, he wouldn't get bullied as much. And then he felt that basically he was doing the same thing to some extent at the poker table, where it wasn't playing to his full potential because of this program. We worked through that program, and I remember after one of these sessions, he was like, I'm just going to win now. And then he went on the most insane heater in poker, and that was a few weeks before I think it was an Alpha 8 tournament at the Venetian or the Bellagio.
15 or 16 or somewhere, 17?
Yeah, 15, I think, 2015. And then the end of 2015. And then from there, he went on this crazy heater.
Yeah, I'd say him, Dan Coleman, Bono. There's like 3 or 4 runs of like the most incredible. And his runs. Maybe the first of those are right in there, like, whereas like there's just almost unbelievable, like a super user live, like just couldn't lose. I remember
it was just insane. And obviously to be part of that story and just watch it go from, hey, he's never won a high roller to like he just wins all the high rollers and effectively, you know, semi-retires from that scene. He's back in there now, but we went on this run and just saw all of this stuff. And as I say, the story's in the book, and it's just been so fun to be involved with that.
And how do you schedule your time? Because if you're, obviously there's 8 coaches now, but you have clients and people you work with, and sometimes what if someone needs sort of like or for example, Fedor or some high rollers, or people are in the same tournament or want to do the same kind of times, or before, you know, day 2 or 3 or a final table, and you have multiple people. Have you ever had conflicts, or how do you kind of juggle your time?
First come, first serve, basically. So obviously we're aware there's sometimes going to be situations where players are in the same tournaments. You know, the main, I don't know how many players I've got in the main
Yeah.
at the moment. Probably a lot.
Yeah.
So sometimes that comes up and people reach out, and I try and be as flexible as possible from that side.
Yeah.
And generally we can work around it. You
Right.
know, there's usually enough time. It's not like I'm going to end up with every player on the final table. Maybe sometimes there are 2 players on a final table, and
Yeah.
we just fit in 2 sessions before it.
Very, very cool. And do you find yourself that you get your time with, you know, you have twins, right? They're 10 years old.
10-year-old
And like,
twins.
how do you, have you found that with building a business and 8 coaches, and obviously Ryan, who's great, works with you for a long time, and like scheduling and doing everything, looking back, would you do anything differently with your like terms of balance with family time, building a business, and then all your clients? Because sometimes too, people want to do times, and I know we've juggled with scheduling, and you know, it's different time
3 in the
zones.
morning in France or something like that.
Yeah. So I mean, it's like, how do you sort of like looking back on it? Do you wish you said no more, or is it essential to build and do your business the best it can be? Like, how do you? Because I struggle with that. I like about when, you know, what are the boundaries, business and family, and trying to do more. It's never enough.
So what I've done with it is, like, I love my job. I love helping people. And usually if there's a moment like that where someone's like, hey, I really need a session at 2 in the morning, it's because they've got a title fight in the UFC, or they're at the final table of a big tournament in Europe or in Asia or something like that. Like, I will always make time for those events because they're the exciting events.
Yeah.
When it comes to time with my family and children, I've just got periods of time that I block out in my week, and I make sure that that is the time for my children. So I put them to bed every single night. So that's sort of a block of time where I always see them at that time.
Got it.
And then I work from home because nearly all of my work's via Zoom. So although I might be busy with sessions, there's always this time between sessions where, you know, I'll head downstairs, we'll go and play a game. I'll try and get some quality time with them. So there's a case of like trying to make sure we fit in this balance. But you can structure that into your week. I live a pretty structured week. As I say, I get up at the same time.
What time is that?
I get up at 6 o'clock every morning.
6 a.m. Okay.
Yeah, and then I'm, as I say, straight into the sauna. I do the meditation. I have my personal trainer turn up. That's different times of the day. But it's like following these routines gives you the space. I think where people struggle is when they don't know what they're supposed to be doing with their day. They spend a lot of time perhaps sitting in their office, wasting time that's unproductive. But if you're planning out your week before the week starts, and, you know, in my case, I know when I'm working on Prime Mind, I know when I'm doing client calls, I know when I'm doing, you know, the coaching training for my coaches, those sorts of things. And that allows me to fit in the space for my family. And, you know, hopefully in 15, 20 years, they say that I saw them enough and I feel I did. But you never know. Like, we're all trying to do the best job we can. And we'll see what my kids say to their therapist. When,
exactly.
You know, we never know.
Yes. And so you go to bed at like 11, roughly? That's when you try to go to bed?
No, way earlier.
Oh, so you get more than, 7 hours is like.
Yeah, but I'm talking about actually asleep. Like, so I'm in bed like 9:30 to 10 o'clock. And then, because usually I'll wake up a little bit before my actual get up time. And then that gives me that buffer of if I don't fall asleep right away, I'm still getting those hours. And I think that's one thing when it comes to sleep, a lot of people don't recognize is they're like, I need 7 hours of sleep. I'll go to bed at midnight and I'll get up at 7. The chances that you go to bed at midnight and you instantly fall asleep, and then you wake up at 7, like there's a difference between hours in bed and hours asleep. And I'm looking for 7 hours asleep every night.
Right. Yeah. And do you have any, like, put the phone away or don't have it in your room or aren't on the phone at a certain time? Do you do any of that kind of stuff? Because nowadays, I mean, the screen time, it's actually shocking. Like I've like, you know, I'm kind of how I am and wired, but like, you know, I don't know what you are, your screen time today, mine's insane. And I think nowadays the average actually is like crazy. Like people are on their phones all day long. Do you have any rules or tricks with that?
I mean, I just recommend like getting it turned off so in my case, when I go to bed, I put the phone down. Right. You know, but I leave it in the room. And, you know, maybe that's one of the things I should talk to Molly about. Right. But
what's it called, the website?
Sleep. So hers is sleepisaskill.com.
Sleep is a skill. Yeah. That is definitely, I mean, it's less. You spend a third of your life about, right? So pretty important to get it right.
Definitely.
Yeah. Interesting. I'll have to check that out. Is there any other interesting individuals you're working with, ideas? I mean, AI is happening now. Do you have any sort of clients or industries or things that are just like unique or that you've learned recently that are fascinating?
I've got one company I've worked with. is involved in satellite data. I find that very interesting. You know, it's a large number of satellites in space, and
not SkyFi, is it?
It's a different one.
Shout out to SkyFi.
Know your friends.
Yeah.
And then there's tons of stuff in crypto. So you know, there's so much going on in the background there that is it's exciting to see what's going to happen over the next few years.
Do you have any, I think I did this, crypto, like in general, are you kind of, I mean, it's a wild time, right? It's just going everywhere all the time. What's your sort of thoughts in general on crypto?
I'm no expert.
All right.
I think long-term bullish, short-term, who knows?
Right.
Like that's my gut instinct, but you know, not financial advice.
And how is your poker game? How much poker do you play?
I'm not
do you get
great.
To play?
Like I rarely get to play. I mean, I'll play a little bit of 1-2 for fun every now and again.
Yeah.
I mean, but you know, I am not a professional poker player. I'm not a high-level player. Like I think one year I'm going to jump into one of the events just for fun because I talk poker, you know, hours a day.
Yeah.
But you know, a lot now of my business is working with these people in different industries, working with traders, working with professional athletes, and I don't have the time to study poker to be a successful player. And I know what the best players in the world are doing. I know what you need to be competitive. And I want to be the best mindset coach in the world. And that means I've got to focus all of my time on improving my craft, and adding something as time intensive as poker to it is just not realistic that I can be at a level where it's going to make as much sense as me just focusing in more on my career.
And you know, you speak about top 10, top 50 to get people. You work with people to get the best, and you say you want to be the best. How do you who else would you say as a mentor you respect or in the space, or who is regarded? And I mean, obviously you are one of them. Who else would you put in the conversation? And what makes a great mindset coach? Like, what are some attributes that determine the best mindset coach? And is there like in the history, you know, like every industry kind of has their Mount Rushmore. I mean, is there some guys that have historically laid the ground here? I
mean, there's Tim Grover who worked with Michael Jordan.
Okay.
There's Michael Gervais who works with some big teams in different sports. So there are some other, obviously in poker there's Jared as well and Tommy Angelo who've been around for a long time.
Yep.
And there are some other great poker coaches, mindset poker coaches as well. So there are some big names out there. I'm trying to really focus on this diversity. So I don't know how many of these coaches are also working with CEOs of companies, with traders, with poker players, with athletes.
Yeah.
A lot of the time people specialize in an individual niche. And what I would like to do is just work with high performance. And what I do is like the highest performers of any industry, because I believe everything is effectively the same. Self-sabotage is something that we can work through. And the high pressure event that creates the self-sabotage, it's irrelevant what it is for the kind of work that I do, because as we work through the issues, as we work through the memories, it's going to resolve it in training or fighting or, you know, Olympic sports or whatever else it might be, just by working through the narratives. So I would like to be known as the high performance mindset coach, who anyone who's trying to become number one in the world, top 5 in the world, is, you know, I'm on that list of people to reach out to.
And what is one of them that makes a lot of sense? What is one of the more common sort of obstacles, if it's like ADHD or, you know, focus or just organization? What are some things you notice that are like cogs, blocks for people to be successful? Or one thing that maybe you've helped people, if you had to pick one thing that is like a common thing that like was an aha moment where they just like, wow, okay, this has allowed me to sort of get to the next level.
I mean, I would say the main thing that I focus on is this self-sabotage. So it's any time a client is seeing a repeating pattern in their life that's leading to a sabotage behavior. So that might be procrastination, it might be excessive gambling, it might be excessive anxiety, but somewhere where there's a physical response when they're trying to do something they know they should do. So, hey, you know that you're beaten, but you have to cool the river anyway, because you just can't help yourself but cool the river anyway. And you feel physically pressured into doing that. It's those moments where there's a physical sensation that's created by emotions, where the sort of work that I do can have the highest benefit, because from there we can understand where it's coming from, we can work through it and release it. Right. And so that's any high pressure environment where those sensations are showing up for you.
Interesting. And what has been in the poker main event or sort of a storied run. I mean, so people come to you, they make the final table, the main, or just you sort of know that, and then they'll come in, they want to work through. What are you doing for someone that you haven't worked with but comes to you and needs sort of like a shotgun? They're looking for some kind of help. What are you able to do for someone in that sense?
Yeah, so when it comes to the main event, I've been fortunate. I worked with Scott Blumstein in 2017. I worked with Adrian a couple of years ago. He came second. And what we're looking to do is really reduce the anxiety and the stress of the moment as far as we possibly can in as short a time as can, because in these cases, I only have a few days to work with them so that they can play the hands in the way they would have played them if they weren't under the pressure of literally millions of dollars being on the line and them going from unknown to super famous over a 3-day period. So really it's that taking that emotional pressure down and turning it into each of these hands as a puzzle. You just need to solve that puzzle and move to the next one. We're not thinking about the fact we're on TV. We're not thinking about the fact there's millions of dollars. What is the best way to play this particular hand? How do you stay focused? How do you stay in the moment? So trying to get them in flow and get their anxiety down, because we know that almost everyone at that final table is going to be extraordinarily stressed. And if I can reduce the stress of my clients and the other guys are stressed, we're going to have a higher edge at the table. And that's the work that I've done with guys on the final table over the years.
Very cool. And my last actual question for now, because it was second time guest again, number 19, you guys can check it out and take a look at that prior podcast, which was about 5 years ago. What is, if you had to pick someone, business, poker, maybe throw athlete, do 3 categories, who do you find more, in general, a stereotyping, coachable, and more willing and eager to learn?
I don't know that it's industry related. What I think it is it's the personality. It's the people who come to me and they say, I know there's something where I'm not at my top performance, but I can't put my finger on it, but I want to fix this problem. So it's when the client comes to me and they're sort of like, I want to put in the work to change because I know my life's going to be different if I do. And again, that doesn't matter to me what industry it is. It's that mindset of like, they're willing to do the work. They're willing to cover the uncomfortable conversations. They're willing to take responsibility. And when I get those guys and gals at that level, that's where we see the magic happen and these big shifts and changes.
Very cool. And where can people follow you and or your business? What's the most accessible, best place? Instagram, Twitter, what website, YouTube, what's the best?
So ElliotRoe.com for coaching with me. PrimedMind.com to get the app or find it on, as I say, iTunes or Google. And then Twitter at Elliot Roe 1 and Instagram's at Elliot Roe. But certainly the coaching side is, ElliotRoe.com or PrimedMind.com.
Beautiful. Well, listen, that is number 206, The Flow Show in the book. Second time guest, Elliot Roe. Appreciate the time. Good to see you in person here in Vegas. And we'll be, I'm sure, doing number 3 soon. And hopefully I'm coming to you for some coaching at the main event.
I'll see you at the final table.
Yes. Yeah, appreciate it.
Thanks, Jeff.
Thanks a lot.
Appreciate you.